In a realm where every star narrates a tale, have you ever envisioned a primitive world astonishing a technologically advanced alien cruiser with unexpected strength? Let us delve into the narrative. The XT-97 cruiser trembled as it penetrated the planet's upper atmosphere. Commander VRE exhaled in satisfaction upon observing the sensor readings: habitable conditions, moderate gravity, a biosphere rich in exploitable resources, and most importantly, a weak localized energy signature indicating a solitary, underdeveloped settlement. Scanning complete, Commander CHP's subordinate, Lisk, communicated through the bridgecom with a thin voice. The target settlement corresponds with established templates for early-stage civilizations, armaments. VRE rumbled, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the schematic of the unsuspecting human colony, noting, "Primarily kinetic projectile weaponry, Commander. Large, bulky platforms with low velocity, easily countered by standard shielding." A dismissive trill escaped L's mandibles, a pathetic display by any advanced species. Bell curled a thin, rigid tentacle in agreement, asserting that these primitive beings would be oblivious to the impending threat. Even their distress signals would not reach another star system before the XT-97 accomplished its civilizing mission. "Hail them, Lisk," the commander commanded. "Let them grasp the futility of resistance." Lisk chirped and initiated the connection to the Universal Translator Matrix. Moments later, a resounding, synthesized voice reverberated across the crude, calm frequencies of the human settlement. "Attention, primitives of this world. You are in violation of the X-Expansive Compact. Surrender your settlement, and you may be spared." The extermination of the human response was sluggish. To Val's annoyance, it crackled faintly over the comm line, accompanied by a burst of laughter. "Did you hear that, Rusty?" a gruff voice echoed. "They want us to surrender." A younger voice, filled with awe, responded, "I am transmitting visuals to the bridge now, Commander." On the main screen, the image clarified, revealing a weathered human holding a crude datapad, standing in what seemed to be the command center of the settlement. Another human crouched beside him, adjusting lenses on a bulky optical device. "Hold on, you pompous bastards," the grizzled human drawled into his rudimentary comm device. "Let me get a good look at you." The screen flickered again, this time displaying a distorted, fish-eyed view of the XT-9 commander. VRA instinctively curled a tentacle in revulsion. These primates were even more visually unappealing up close. Rusty, provide me with a munitions readout on those things," the gruff human barked. "Targeting solutions are locked on all visible hostiles," a new voice replied, crisp and far too calm for someone facing imminent annexation. Val straightened, a mixture of amusement and mild affront causing Tanai to twitch. "This creature dares to threaten us? Open it, Chandel Lisk. I shall enlighten it on the true meaning of power." His words resonated throughout the human command center, delivered in a synthesized imitation of their barbaric language. "Your defiance is noted and deemed futile. Our energy shields render your crude projectile weapons obsolete. This conflict has but one logical outcome." Yeah, we get it," the grizzled human interrupted with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Big guns. Fancy shields, blah blah blah. How about this? You fire first. Let's see how obsolete these guns truly are," VRA chittered in genuine laughter. Lisk mirrored his mirth. Had these creatures truly lost their sanity in the face of overwhelming force? "So be it," VRA boomed. "Prepare a low-intensity pulse to disable their primary structure." A wave of his tentacles sent Lisk scurrying to the weapon controls. A focused energy beam shimmered to life at the bow of the XT-97, a brilliant lance of emerald green that slashed towards the heart of the human settlement. It struck their main command building squarely and did nothing. The humans observed the coarse skating energy field shimmer and dissipate against the crude, blocky structure. Commander V blinked all 6 of his eyes, unsure if his visual receptors had malfunctioned. Commander? This voice was a thin chirp of confusion. The shielding appears, inert. No energy transfer of any kind. Impossible! The bellow echoed across the XT-9 bridge. Cycle the MS, increase the power amplitude again. The crackling green bolt lanced forth once more, yet the results failed to meet expectations. No scorching blast marks, no overloading circuits, not even a flicker of the human's crude lights on the main view screen. The grizzled human let out a low, humorous chuckle. His weathered face tightened into a scowl. "All right, boys," he barked. "Let them know why you don't bring a pea shooter to a real gunfight." Hi, sorry to interrupt the story, but a lot of you who are listening right now aren't actually subscribed. It's completely free and allows our stories to appear on your feed much more often if you're enjoying the story. Please take a moment to click the subscribe button located beneath the video. Now, returning to the narrative, the younger human next to him, who had been managing the optical feed, grinned broadly with delight. His fingers danced over a chipped and worn control panel with remarkable skill. Commander Vell initiated a comm channel, preparing to shout and intimidate the threat, when an unusual droning noise pierced the bridge. The sound escalated rapidly in pitch, becoming deafening, and seemed to vibrate the very hull of the XT-97. He looked around frantically, trying to locate the source, just in time to catch a glimpse of a glimmer streaking towards the cruiser. Thor's eyes widened as the primitive projectile approached at an astonishing speed, appearing as a blinding dot against the dark expanse of space. It struck with a direct hit. The impact was completely silent, visible only as a fleeting distortion in the cruiser's shimmering energy shields. Then, the distortion expanded outward, and the flawless integrity of the shield faltered, warping inward. For a brief moment, it appeared as though the very fabric of reality had buckled before a gaping hole burst open in the hull of the X-97. The bridge descended into chaos as alarms blared in dissonant tones, and flashing lights illuminated the crew consoles in a tumult of crimson and amber. Consoles exploded, showering Lisk and the other crew members with debris. Bell himself was hurled from his command chair, tumbling across the slanted deck. Miraculously, the ship remained intact as secondary systems activated, sealing breaches and desperately rerouting power. VRA managed to regain his footing, a hiss of pain escaping him as one of his tentacles scraped against exposed, sparking circuitry. He roared, cutting through the din of alarms and cries of panic. "Primary shield generator offline," Lisk chirped, his voice tinged with panic. "Trill, massive hull breach. 1X3 and 4, life support failing in multiple sections." Another blinding speck flashed in the viewports, this time piercing straight through the aft auxiliary engine pod, the projectile emerging in a shower of vaporized metal and shredded circuits. The XT-97 shuddered, the rear section erupting in a brilliant flare of exploding plasma. "Commander!" The younger human's voice filtered through the comms, laced with an odd mix of awe and excitement. "That was a tungsten slug at 10% of its speed. How's it taste?" Vrex stared in horror at the dissipating debris field, once a vital part of his pristine cruiser. Their intelligence had been fatally flawed. These weren't bulky platforms or low-velocity weapons. Each was a planet killer in miniature. He snarled, pushing past a cluster of terrified crew members. "Return fire! Target their weapons and placements!" The XT-97 lurched violently as its remaining engines desperately pushed it into a chaotic, corkscrewing, evasive pattern. Weapon systems flickered back online, targeting arrays desperately locking on to the rapidly shifting positions of the human weapons. Below, in response, the humans fired again. This time, the projectile was smaller, faster, an impossibly thin sliver of light against the blackness of space. It arced erratically, skipping and spinning in defiance of conventional physics before punching through the X-97's central sensor. Scraped against exposed sparking circuitry, he roared, cutting through the din of alarms and cries of panic. "Primary shield generator offline," Lisk chirped, his voice tinged with panic. "Trill, massive hull breach. Onyx 3 and 4, life support failing in multiple sections." Another blinding speck flashed in the viewports, this time piercing straight through the aft auxiliary engine pod, the projectile emerging in a shower of vaporized metal and shredded circuits. The XT-97 shuddered, the rear section erupting in a brilliant flare of exploding plasma. "Commander!" The younger human's voice filtered through the comms, laced with an odd mix of awe and excitement. "That was a tungsten slug at 10% of its speed. How's it taste?" Vrex stared in horror at the dissipating debris field, once a vital part of his pristine cruiser. Their intelligence had been fatally flawed. These weren't bulky platforms or low-velocity weapons. Each was a planet killer in miniature. He snarled, pushing past a cluster of terrified crew members. "Return fire! Target their weapons and placements!" The XT-97 lurched violently as its remaining engines desperately pushed it into a chaotic, corkscrewing, evasive pattern. Weapon systems flickered back online, targeting arrays desperately locking on to the rapidly shifting positions of the human weapons. Below, in response, the humans fired again. This time, the projectile was smaller, faster, an impossibly thin sliver of light against the blackness of space. It arced erratically, skipping and spinning in defiance of conventional physics before punching through the X-97's central sensor. The plan was a route to slaughter. The expansive compact of the glorious vision of interstellar dominion lay in tatters, defeated not by superior strategy, but by the primitive savagery of these apes. In the final moments, the grizzled human's gruff voice returned to a calm, tinged with the faintest hint of pity. All right. Listen, Aelin, I don't know who you are or why you showed up spouting threats, but this is a bad day for you. Pull back now, and maybe, just maybe, we can chalk this up to a misunderstanding." Valerie wanted to bellow defiance, threats, anything to salvage the last fragments of his pride, yet no words emerged. He could only stare at the viewports as another railgun spat its payload of death, the projectile burning ever closer with impossible swiftness. "Incoming!" he put forward. "I can't target lock." The terror had fully overtaken the young technician's voice. Now, a flicker of movement caught V's attention. The grizzled human, the leader, stood alone amid the chaos of his command center. With a sigh that carried over the comms, he tossed his primitive datapad aside and stood straight, facing the main viewport as if awaiting the inevitable. Then the light swallowed it all, the viewport, the grizzled human, the remains of the human settlement. In that blinding flash, Commander VRE realized a profound truth. The X were not conquerors, merely the latest in a long lineage of fools stumbling blindly into a galaxy far more dangerous than they could ever comprehend. When the light had faded, the X-97 was no longer a warship, but a drifting, crippled hulk. Its once gleaming hull was pockmarked, and scorched vital systems flickered and failed. What remained of Commander Vray's crew huddled in the few still functional escape pods, their eyes wide with shock and fear. Far stood amidst them, his pride fully shattered, here at the backwater edge of the galaxy. The dreams of expansion were not merely thwarted, but rendered utterly laughable. Below, the planet seemed unchanged. No grand explosion, no world-shattering impact, just the quiet hum of a human settlement picking up the pieces of an unexpected encounter. A chirp from the escape pod's primitive comm system broke his reverie. It was the gruff voice again, weary and strained. "You still up there, Alan? We'll hold off on finishing the job as long as you folk get out of our system and don't come back." Once an emblem of zeal, arrogance managed a single croaking word in response: acknowledged. He initiated the pod's launch sequence. The XT-97, his command, dwindled rapidly away. His last image was not of victorious humans celebrating amidst wreckage, nor was it of the vast unexplored reaches of the galaxy ripe for opportunistic conquest. Instead, it was the bulky form of a human railgun, its ungainly barrel stark against the blue marble of the planet, an unyielding sentinel promising swift annihilation to any who might underestimate the primitive creatures below ever again. As his pod hurtled away, Commander Vrain knew the X would not report this encounter. To do so would invite ridicule or worse, a preemptive strike from other civilizations who understood the true terror humanity possessed. Perhaps in time, the galaxy would learn of the guns that laughed at energy shields, but currently, the secret would remain with the survivors of the XT-97 and the colonists safeguarding their backwater world. Commander VRE pondered how long this secret could be preserved. Cautious observation, intertwined with a slow progression of bureaucracy, followed the return of the damaged escape pods to the Guile homeworld, carrying survivors who spoke little and even less frequently about their humiliating defeat. Initially dismissed as an isolated freak incident, a stroke of terrible luck, the encounter began to erode the edges of the Zeal-expansive compact. Whispers emerged in the corridors of power, sowing doubt regarding the true extent of their technological supremacy. After all, who could say what other monstrosities might be lurking in the galactic wilderness? A quiet collective reluctance to explore further afield took root, leading to efforts focused on fortifying existing territories, perfecting energy shielding techniques, and developing countermeasures specifically designed to counter hypervelocity projectiles. The humans remained oblivious. Their long-range sensors detected the shift in galactal activity, yet they lacked the context to comprehend the profound fear they had instilled. Life on the colony continued much as it had before, punctuated by the occasional launch of a colossal railgun round into deep space, a routine test, or perhaps a silent reminder to whatever might be observing. Meanwhile, Commander Velag became somewhat of a pariah. He had ascended high in Gel's ranks on the promise of easy conquest, but that promise now crumbled to dust beneath his quad feet. Shunted to a backwater research outpost, he was assigned the task with a singular and almost insulting objective. The aim was to develop a shield capable of withstanding a railgun strike. Time seemed to consume itself as VRA endured his punishment. Prototypes were constructed, tested, and inevitably transformed into smoldering craters by merciless technicians. VRE became haggard, haunted by the blinding flash, the droning whine, and the unstoppable projectiles. He began to suspect that the task was not merely difficult, but rather impossible. Kinetic energy was brutally simple, a fundamental force, unlike the elegant manipulation of electromagnetism upon which GE technology had been founded. Thus, with growing dread, Commander VR came to a horrifying realization. Perhaps the humans, in their primitive focus on such monstrous weapons, had stumbled upon an uncomfortable universal truth. Sometimes, the simplest and most brutal solution was also the most effective. Perhaps they were not barbarians. That label now seemed to rest uncomfortably upon the once mighty Zil. Expensive and compact, decades slipped past, blurring the traumatic edges of the past. Commander Vera, now frail and gray, found himself the reluctant repository of a terrible secret. The X's new doctrine of defense and consolidation had lulled them into a false sense of security. Yet he knew it was only a matter of time until another ambitious race, or perhaps even a splinter of his own people, stumbled upon a vulnerable world that happened to be under human protection. The old arrogance had faded, replaced by annoying paranoia in all but the youngest generations. The fear of the unseen railgun and the unstoppable projectile lingered beneath the surface. In every strategic meeting regarding each shipyard requisition form, Zil explorers survey the stars, not with aspirations of growth, but with the apprehension of encountering a formidable gunmetal sentinel aimed directly at them. The humans, in their ignorance, continued to prosper, their colony expanded, evolving into a recognized yet isolated outpost. Trade delegations from other, more cautious species arrived, bringing gifts of advanced technology in exchange for tales of the legendary railguns. None dared to approach too closely, for the stories reverberated through the years, acquiring a mythic quality: the monstrous weapons, the laughing defenders. VR, nearing the end of his lifespan, made a desperate choice. Utilizing back channels and coded transmissions, he reached out to the human colony. The message was succinct, lacking titles or formalities. You must warn the galaxy. Shield technology is ineffective against your weapons. Do not disclose your secrets. We made a grave error, and others will too. He received no reply and doubted he ever would. It was not in the nature of humans to comprehend the fear they now instilled in an entire interstellar civilization. Perhaps they would dismiss it as nonsense or assume it was a ruse. Yet the message alone provided VRA with some comfort in his final days. When the end arrived, he departed not as a proud commander, but as the bearer of a chilling truth. The humans might never recognize the profound shadow they cast across the galaxy, nor how their mere existence had changed the trajectory of history. Perhaps it was better that way. Allow them to continue being the unassuming guardians, the quiet protectors armed with their impossibly powerful guns, while the rest of the Geo and any others who dared to listen cowered in the awareness that sometimes the quietest voice posed the greatest threat. The galaxy turned as it always had. Empires expanded, ebbed, and ultimately crumbled into stardust. New technological marvels were introduced, reshaping trade, communication, and the very fabric of galactic civilization. Even amidst the cautious zeal, an echo of their once conquest-driven nature began to resurface. Yet one thing remained unchanged. None dared to set an uninvited foot upon a world marked by the unmistakable stamp of humanity. Lush worlds, bearing the telltale signs of shielded orbital railgun arrays, were simply avoided. Whispers of the unkillable species rippled through space lanes, spoken of both in awe and lingering fear. Meanwhile, humanity expanded, as it always does. Additional colonies were established, trade routes flourished, and a slow but undeniable respect began to spread for these unique and unexpectedly formidable beings. It was not the sleek starships or sophisticated energy manipulation that captured the galaxy's attention, but rather the ungainly railguns, those planet-cracking behemoths that roared across the light years. Of course, there were those foolish enough to test the legend, pirate raiders driven by desperation or greed who sometimes descended upon a fresh, unprotected human outpost. The outcome was invariably the same. The lumbering railgun turrets would awaken, their targeting solutions precise, and their hypervelocity projectiles would roar into the void, meeting the raiders head-on. In a bustling spaceport on a world distant from the original human colony, a young Gel officer listened attentively as a seasoned human mercenary narrated a tale over a glass of bitter liquor. "Those dumb bastards thought we were easy targets," the merc chuckled, his voice still rough from the rigors of combat. "They didn't even get a shot off before the railguns lit them up like fireworks on festival day." The shield officer, a representative of the new, cautious generation, shuddered. He had heard these stories before, of course, but there was something unsettling in the merc's nonchalant tone, the absolute certainty in his words. As the night progressed and the drinks were consumed more freely, the merc leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper. "I'll tell you something, friend," he slurred. "Those railguns aren't the worst thing those folks have hidden away. You see, once they figured out how to punch holes in starships, well, let's just say they became quite inventive." The shield officer chose not to probe further. He didn't need to. The fear deeply embedded in the collective Zill unconsciousness was sufficient. He finished his drink, settled his tab, and stepped out into the neon-lit streets, casting a weary glance at the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, humans continued their lives alongside their planet-destroying weapons. For the time being, they were protectors, albeit unwittingly. However, the universe is a capricious mistress, and the officer could not shake the feeling that one day those guns might be turned outward, aimed not in defense, but towards a new horizon. If that day were ever to arrive, the Gel and the entirety of the galaxy could only hope they would find themselves on the right side of the barrel.